What do you see when you look at yourself in a mirror? For most of you, the answer will be nothing impressive. You probably have a flabby stomach, you can't see your abs, or you barely have a 2-pack showing. Now, what if I told you that this didn't need to be the case anymore? What if I told you that in a matter of a few weeks or months, we could fully reverse that and get you to the point where you can look in that same mirror with a sense of pride and self-respect? Just imagine the amount of excitement and self-love you would have if you actually achieved that goal of getting a 6-pack. For most of you, the thought of actually getting to that goal seems very far off, but I promise you it's really not that difficult. Many of us are stuck because of our belief systems, and most of the time, these belief systems do not accurately represent reality. The truth is that even if you believe that getting abs is impossible or very hard for you, the reality is that it's actually very simple no matter your body type or any of these genetic factors. In December 2023, I reached peak dirty bulk at 185 pounds, and once I realized that my blood pressure was through the roof and I looked like crap, I decided to go the other way. A few months later, I reached my leanest point and, well, although I did become quite small, I was shredded. Now, your problem right now is that you can't seem to get abs. So in this video, I want to explain exactly how you can make your abs pop and show you that it's actually a very easy goal for anyone to accomplish. Within the fitness industry, many have this belief that abs are built in the kitchen, not in the gym. But this is only half true. The idea behind is that your abs won't show no matter how much you train them if you have too much fat covering them. Now, while it is true that you need to be lean enough for your abs to show, to really make them pop and make them look impressive, they need training. That's why I believe the new quote shouldn't say, abs are built in the kitchen, but abs are built in the gym and made visible in the kitchen. So, how do you get abs? First of all, I won't give you some quick get abs in 30 days kind of bullshit. On this channel, we discuss the reality of things and we don't give false promises. In reality, to get abs, there's 3 main categories you need to focus on: training, nutrition, and habit building. For training, we'll cover exactly how to train your abs for ab growth specifically. For nutrition, we'll discuss how to change your diet and understand nutrition to make your abs visible in the easiest and most sustainable way. And finally, habit formation, because since this will be a quite extensive journey of a few months, this will make the process of getting a 6-pack much easier, smoother, and make the process truly feel effortless. Now, of course, there are other categories that come into play, but for the most part, we can boil down getting abs to these 3 categories. So, let's begin with training. Like I said before, in the fitness industry, there's often a belief that training abs is useless because they won't show unless you're lean enough. And like I said, that answer is half true, because while it is true that they won't show no matter how much you train them, if you're not lean enough, they will look much better if you eventually cut down, if you train them frequently enough. You wouldn't apply that same logic to any other muscle group. You wouldn't say, I don't train my legs because unless I'm lean enough, they won't show anyways. This is why it's still very important you train your abs. So the most common way that people train abs is through ab training circuits. This is where you essentially do many different exercises at a low intensity for a period of 5 to 20 minutes. Most of the time, you do one exercise for 30 seconds, then the rest for 15 seconds, then you move on to the next one for 30 seconds, and so on. There are tons of videos taking advantage of that format, and these videos absolutely crush it on YouTube, or at least they used to a few years ago. But the problem is that those videos tell you what you want to hear, not what you need to hear. Much of YouTube is based on getting views only, not actually helping the person behind the screen. The main issue with this type of training is that they treat ab training like a completely different thing that needs its own training style, when in reality, ab muscles grow in the exact same way other muscles do. In order for any muscle to grow, it needs water, protein, energy, and a strong enough stimulus to grow, and that stimulus or stress has to be increased slowly over time. When you do circuit style training for your abs, you simply don't stimulate your abs enough for them to grow, and even if you could, you wouldn't be able to progressively increase that stimulus over time because these ab workouts are very difficult to track. We should treat ab muscles in the exact same way as we do any other muscle group in the body. If you try to completely optimize your shoulder growth, you wouldn't be doing 5 to 10 minute circuit style shoulder workouts. You would choose 2 to 3 exercises where you perform 2 to 3 hard sets of each of those exercises, and you would progressively overload the intensity of each exercise over the course of the weeks and months. What we need to do is apply that same logic to ab training as well. What you want to do is pick 1 to 2 exercises that you can easily progressively overload over time and stick with those. The best exercises that you can do are leg raises and doing any version of an ab crunch. Those are two exercises which will stimulate ab muscles to grow very effectively and that you can very easily improve upon. Leg raises are very good for targeting lower ab development. How you want to do those is by either hanging from a bar or on a Roman chair. Both options are really good, but which one you end up using just depends on the one you prefer. The important thing with those is that you shouldn't swing your legs up. You always want to keep good control over the movement. Also, always keep a full range of motion, keep a good mind-muscle connection, and go slower on the downward movement than on the upwards movement. If you can't do straight legs fully yet, you can bend your knees and do them like this. On leg raises, you can do them 3 times a week for 2 to 3 hard sets and for 10 to 15 reps. Once you get to 15 reps on all your sets, you can add extra ankle weights or straighten your legs if you started off with bent knees and go back to 10 reps with that extra difficulty. For crunches, there's multiple options you can use. You can either do them with a cable on the ground, on a machine if you have one, or simply on the ground whilst maybe holding a plate to make it more difficult. Any option is good as long as you're able to keep good control over the movement, squeeze your abs, and are able to easily progressively overload the movement. Here you want to keep your arms in a steady position and let your abs do all the work. With ab crunches ideally, just do them the same day as you do your leg raises and also do them 3 times a week for 2 to 3 hard sets and for 10 to 12 reps per set, and each set taken close to failure. The reason we can train abs 3 times a week is because they're a very small muscle group that can recover quite quickly and we don't need a full 72 hours for them to recover. Now, in terms of cardio, the best form you will do to lean down is general activity. Yes, doing cardio is helpful, but when we think about pure weight loss, non-exercise activity thermogenesis or NEAT is much more powerful at burning calories. NEAT is considered any movement that isn't exercise. When I take the stairs instead of the elevator, when I write things down, when I'm typing on a keyboard, these are all things considered NEAT. Now, obviously cardio will burn more calories in the same amount of time. However, you wouldn't be able to run for 5 hours straight, but what you can do is stay relatively active for 5 hours and you wouldn't feel the same level of fatigue. That is why NEAT is much more effective at burning calories than cardio is. Now, does it mean that cardio doesn't have its importance? Of course not. But when we think about calories and burning them, general activity is much more effective than cardio is. If you still want to do cardio, 150 to 200 minutes of moderate intensity cardio spread throughout the week is a good number to hit. So in summary, train your abs 3 times a week, do 2 exercises per workout, 1 crunch exercise and 1 leg raise exercise. For crunches, do 2 to 3 hard sets and 10 to 12 reps per set, and for leg raises, do 2 to 3 hard sets and 10 to 15 reps per set. Do not do those 10-minute ab workouts, and for cardio, keep it to general activity or 150 to 200 minutes of moderate intensity cardio spread throughout the week. Now, moving on to nutrition. This is where the argument from before is true, because it doesn't matter how much you train them, they won't show unless you're lean enough. So, how do we get leaner? At the very basis, we need to put ourselves in a caloric deficit, which means we should burn more calories than we consume every day. Now, many like to argue that calories are not all that matters, and well, that is true, but in terms of pure fat loss, this is where we should put most of our attention. Not all our attention, but most of it. How many calories you should eat really depends on your current body weight, and since everyone has different bodies and different metabolisms, it's impossible to give an exact way to measure how many calories you should eat. What I would do to start is take your current body weight in pounds and multiply it by 12. So, if you're 200 pounds, you should eat 2400 calories. Now again, that way of measuring will most likely not be optimal for you, so your goal from there is to adapt your caloric intake. If you are losing weight too fast, increase your calories by 250 to 500 calories, and if you're not losing any weight, try reducing your calories by 250 to 500 calories. Now, how do you go about reducing your calories in an effective and easy way? The easiest way to lower calories from your diet is by analyzing your current diet and see if you're doing one of the following things. 1. Are you consuming high-calorie dense foods? These are foods that have a high amount of calories in them for a low volume. These things will usually be things like cooking oils, butter, peanut butter, nuts, junk foods in general, snacks, high-calorie liquids, and so on. Of course, you don't need to remove all of these things. It's simply about looking for the few key things that could have a big impact on your caloric intake, which you also don't really care about having in your diet, and removing those. What you can do is replace those high-calorie dense foods with lower-calorie dense foods, so foods that have a higher volume with a lower amount of calories in them. These are the typical fruits, vegetables, yogurt, cheese, lean cuts of meat, not fatty ones, and so on. These are foods that will be much more filling than high-calorie dense foods, which will then allow you to stick to a caloric deficit much more easily. These foods will allow you to feel a lot less hungry throughout the day. Number 2, are you consuming enough protein? One of the handy things about protein is that it is much more filling than any other macronutrient, making it much easier to stick to a diet and a caloric deficit. Eating protein helps regulate your ghrelin, which is your hunger hormone, and increase your leptin, which is a hormone making you feel full. Humans have a very good intuition when it comes to choosing foods that we need the most. We have something called the protein leverage hypothesis, which says that because our body knows that it requires a lot of protein, it will push you to keep eating to get more protein. Even if you eat the same amount of calories, you will be hungrier if you eat a low protein diet than you would if you ate a high protein diet. You probably will be more full after a 400-gram ribeye steak than after 2 Big Macs, although you had the same exact calories and the amount of food was similar. The main difference is that the ribeye steak was much higher in protein and nutrients than the 2 Big Macs. In all cases, the more protein people had, the less hungry they felt and the easier they found it to stick to a diet. It's just something you might want to consider. Number 3, are you getting enough vitamins and minerals in? This follows the idea of protein as well. Our body knows that it needs a certain amount of nutrients and it will keep making us hungry and push us to eat to get those nutrients in. Plus, foods that are high in micronutrients also tend to be low-calorie dense foods that are very filling. Number 4, are you getting enough fiber in? Foods that are high in fiber will, just like food volume, help with your satiety. These things are like fruits, vegetables, and so on. Number 5, are you drinking enough water? One of the easiest ways to reduce your appetite is to drink water. This is one of the best weight loss hacks because water is 0 calories, it has minerals and vitamins helping you stay full, and you can drink lots of it without getting any calories in. Always think about keeping water reserves around you and try your best to keep them in sight. That makes it much easier to drink on a frequent enough basis to keep your hunger levels down. This will also help with your general function and performance in the gym. Number 6, are you consuming caffeine or other stimulants? Caffeine is useful for a couple things. The first is that it is a stimulant, which means that it will raise your metabolism and allow you to burn more calories throughout the day. The key here is to keep your coffee as close as possible to coffee. If you start adding in milk, sugar, and other things, calories can quickly add up and the calories you will burn from your increased metabolism will be lower than the calories you consume from the coffee. The second thing with coffee is that it stunts appetite. It is said that the caffeine in coffee can help reduce appetite, delay stomach emptying, and influence appetite hormones, all of which can help you eat less. Number 7, does meal timing help you? There are many different diet schedules out there. Some prefer eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner, some like doing 1 meal a day, and others like doing intermittent fasting. If your goal is to lose fat and cut down, maybe sticking to a specific eating window can help you consume less calories. The most common form is the 16 to 8 eating window, where people eat for 8 hours and fast for 16 hours. Your eating window could start from noon to 8 p.m. for example. With intermittent fasting, people are much less likely to overeat because their food intake is condensed into 8 hours of time, and people also tend to think less about food throughout the day. So if sticking to a specific eating window can help you lose weight and be in a caloric deficit, go for it. Now, in terms of macronutrients, which is the second most important variable right after calories, we should mostly focus on protein. When you are on a cut, you will need more protein because your body will use some of that protein as energy and not for muscle building. If you care about retaining as much muscle as possible during your cut, aim for about 1 to 1.2 grams of protein per pound of body weight. So if you are 170 pounds, try to get 170 to 204 grams of protein per day, and ideally split this protein intake evenly throughout the day. If you get a bit more, you will have more of that filling effect. The more protein you get, the more full you will feel. So even more protein above a certain level doesn't help with muscle building anymore, it can still help blunt your hunger. Another thing with protein is that it has the highest thermic effect of all macronutrients. This means that in order to digest protein, the body has to burn more calories than when it has to digest other macros like fats or carbs. Maybe another reason to prioritize protein on a cut. In terms of fat, we still need those for general function and hormone production. So for these, try to get at least 50 grams a day just to keep your body functioning properly. Now, once you have enough protein and fats, the rest of your calories can come from any source you want. Protein, fats, or carbs. But like I said before, it's maybe a smarter idea to get them from protein because they have that filling effect and they have that higher thermic effect, which in both cases helps you burn more calories and stick to a caloric deficit. Now, in terms of nutrition, we also have some supplements we can consider to help us in our journey. There's 3 main supplements: protein powder, caffeine, and creatine. Protein powder can help us in multiple ways. First, it can help us hit our daily protein intake, which then helps us preserve as much muscle as possible. One of the main problems with cutting is that you can't consume as many calories, but you also need to consume more protein at the same time. So you have to find a way to get more protein from less calories. That's why taking protein powder can be so powerful. You literally only get protein with barely any fats or carbs. Second, it will help you stay more full throughout the day while minimizing caloric intake. Remember the protein leverage hypothesis from before. You will feel a lot more full if you get the nutrients your body needs. For protein powder, don't go over 80 grams per day and try to only take 1 scoop at a time, evenly spread throughout the day, because your body wasn't really meant to consume that much protein in just a few seconds. Then we have caffeine. Like I mentioned before, caffeine can 1. Help you blunt your hunger and make it easier to stick to a caloric deficit. 2. It helps you increase your metabolic rate, which means you'll slightly burn more calories throughout the day. And 3. You'll be able to push harder in the gym, so burn more calories as well. These are the 3 main reasons for taking caffeine. For this, remember that you can build up tolerance for it and you can quickly start increasing the dosage and end up in abusive doses. To avoid building up a tolerance, try to only take it on harder workouts like leg day for example, and keep your dosage to 1 scoop only, which is about 200 milligrams of caffeine. Then the last supplement is creatine. This is one of the most researched supplements out there and has proven over and over again to be effective at helping you build muscle, hold more water within the muscles themselves, making them look bigger and leaner, and generally help you perform better in the gym. For this, take about 5 grams a day, although I haven't seen too many problems with going up to 10 grams a day. Of course, going from 5 to 10 doesn't have many more benefits because you get diminishing returns, but it can slightly help. Now remember that supplements are simply an addition and they won't ever have a substantial effect on your goals, but they can help. If you had to stick to a few key supplements, these would be the only ones: protein powder, caffeine, and creatine. Now, one of the major mistakes I see people make with dieting is trying to cut too fast. Cutting down shouldn't be a race, but a long-term game where you make very slow but consistent progress over time. In terms of weight loss speed, I would stick to 0.5 to 1% of your body weight per week. If you're a 300-pound person, you could lose 1.5 to 3 pounds per week, and that number would obviously lower as you're losing weight. Other recommendations say that losing 1 pound per week is optimal, which is also very good advice. This generally applies to leaner people that have less weight to lose. The reason we don't want to go over 1% of your body weight is because we then start to enter the crash dieting category where things become unsustainable and you're likely to lose too much muscle mass, which is also not a good thing. A second mistake people tend to make is tracking their weight improperly. They either tend to rely on the weight scale too much or take progress pictures in the wrong way. We'll cover in a few minutes how to track your weight properly using a very simple method. Now, in terms of habit formation, we first need to understand why we form habits and what their use case is. The thing with our brains is that they have a natural bias towards making as little effort that is required of us. This is why we have the famous law of least effort. One of the ways it does this is by making certain behaviors automatic and habitual. That way, those behaviors don't require any mental effort to be performed. The reason our brain creates habits is because it saves us mental energy by making those behaviors automatic. Think about the way you brush your teeth or the way you start your morning. It's always in the exact same pattern. This way we don't have to think about it or use any mental energy. That repetitive behavior or pattern is called a habit. Now, there's multiple ways we can start to form habits in our lives. For example, one of those ways is first setting an intention. If I say, I will do X habit at this time in this location, you are much more likely to complete it because you have set an intention. If you say, I will train abs at 4 p.m. in my local gym, you have set an intention. Now, obviously you probably won't go to the gym only to train abs, although you could, so then we can implement something called habit stacking. This is when we stack habits together one after another. This would look something like, after habit X, I will immediately perform habit Y. After my leg day is completed, I will immediately go to the pull-up bars and perform 3 sets of leg raises. Or right after I'm done with my warm-up cardio, I will immediately do my crunches and leg raises. I would recommend you train abs after a workout, but you get the point. What you want to do is stack multiple good habits in a row, so you associate doing all the good habits after doing only one. Another method that I like to use is a habit tracker. The way you make a habit tracker is by writing down the days on one line and the habits to perform on the other line. Then you make a table out of it, and every day you try and scratch all the habits of your habit tracker. I found that making a habit tracker just keeps me accountable for all the habits that I should be doing to get to my goals. Now, how do you track progress? There's 3 ways you can track progress you're making: by weighing yourself, by taking progress pictures, or by measuring yourself. The first method, and also the most common one, is weighing yourself. The problem is that most people measure their weight progress in the wrong way. They'll track it once in the morning, once in the evening, once after a meal, and you just can't accurately measure weight changes that way. The simple rule with tracking weight progress is creating similar conditions every time. So you don't want any liquids or food in your stomach, you don't want to have a filled bladder, you don't want to introduce unnecessary weight that isn't fat mass or lean mass. The way you measure body weight correctly is by weighing yourself first thing in the morning, after peeing, and before drinking or eating anything. That way you create those similar conditions every time. Weight tracking should be done by taking the average over the weeks and see how things change. You can't rely on daily measurements because your body weight will fluctuate on a daily basis. The second tracking method is through progress pictures. Again, with this you want to create similar conditions every time. Many people take pictures at different times, different lighting, and wonder why they look worse 3 weeks in. Just like with weight measurements, you want to take pictures first thing in the morning, whilst fasted, and keep the lighting the exact same every time. That way you again recreate similar conditions every time. Now, you might feel somewhat scared to take pictures of yourself, but remember that these will stay private for yourself, and once you make the transformation, you'll be glad to have these pictures taken at the beginning. Also, taking pictures at the very beginning can serve as a way to hold you accountable to the fact that you started a cutting journey and not quit 3 weeks in. The last method of tracking is through body measurements. This will be the least used out of all of them, simply because it is much more complicated and less practical, and also because we should have enough data with progress pictures and weight measurements. To track body measurements, we'll only keep it at waist measurements, and you do it by using a measurement tape, which you put around your belly button. Don't squeeze or push out your waist, just breathe the air out and let your stomach relax. Take those measurements once a month, and this will help confirm that you're actually losing fat around your waist. Now, after all of this, you may be asking how long this will take to show, and unfortunately I can't give you a concrete answer. How fast you can get abs really depends on 3 things: your starting position, your genetic predisposition to get visible abs, and the amount of effort you put in. I can't account for all these variables because they're all individual and different for everyone. So how fast you can see results really depends on you. But one thing is for sure, is that if you follow this video step by step, you will get there eventually. At the beginning of this video, I told you that getting abs was actually quite easy, and well, I hope that by watching this video you now understand that I was correct. That getting abs doesn't have to be complicated, and there isn't much you have to do or understand in order to get them. Just make sure you train them correctly, reduce your calories very easily with the methods I gave you, get enough protein and fats, and make sure you build those into a habit so that you consistently do those things without too much effort.